Hey there, it's Tuesday. Welcome. This is Medusa Was Framed. My name is Joyce. And yesterday, I was just farting around, exploring things in a part of here in St. Augustine, exploring stuff for another video that I have in mind. And what did I find? You guessed it, another abandoned cemetery. So that's both cool and sad, right? Because these people have families and you think about um, going to pay respects and spend time with your loved one, your ancestor, and it's a mess, right? That's very sad. So the archaeologist in me loves stuff like this, but it saddens me too. So I just want to say that I still have a runny nose, and so if you hear me sniffing or I need to blow my nose or cough or I've got some hot tea with lemon here, I apologize in advance if there's strange noises that accompany what's coming. Thank you for understanding. So I just walked around always in awe, taking photos. And what I've also found is a lot of the time these abandoned cemeteries, there isn't a lot of information about them that I can find unless there's someone significant buried there. Let me tell you about the area. So this is in West St. Augustine. That means it's on the west side of State Road US 1, not State Road, US 1, which is also known as Ponce de Leon Boulevard here in St. Augustine, because everything is Ponce de Leon something here in St. Augustine. King Street is the main street in Old Town, downtown. It runs from the Bridge of Lions. So it's the foot of the St. Augustine side of the Bridge of Lions, goes across the Matanzas River on the east side to Anastasia Island, where it hooks up with A1A, the coast road. That's the eastern direction. If you take King Street west, it crosses the thin peninsula that is that portion of St. Augustine to the San Sebastian River and goes back into what is now an area where there's a lot of marine surplus. Well, when I first started coming to St. Augustine 20 years or so ago, when I first moved to Florida, that part of town was wholesale this and that, and a lot of marine salvage, because we've got the coming together of a lot of bodies of water over there, the San Sebastian River, the Maria Sanchez Creek, what's left of it. A lot of it has been filled in and reverted and culverted and such there. So there's a lot I know about that. So when I first moved to Florida, I lived on a sailboat with a guy. So yeah, so it has changed. It has it's been in, what do you call it? People with money are coming in and making it cool again. I don't want to say that it's gentrifying, because gentrifying, I think of like being gross, rip things down and make them modern, or throw out people who have been living in affordable habitations and go in and drop millions of dollars and turn them into condos and modern apartments and charge an arm and a leg. And, to me, that's just rape. So that's not what's there. A lot of St. Augustine, fortunately, is protected because we are the nation's oldest city. So what's over there is a lot of cool old buildings, at least turn of the century colonial type of things. I mean, the house that I rent my studio in, for instance, was built in 1880, 1888. A lot of stuff here in St. Augustine is cool and beautiful and old, and fortunately that's true. So the people that have been going over there to West King and improving things, bringing in businesses, are doing so in a way where the building that's standing there has to have its integrity maintained. So there's a really cool bulk market called the Refillery and a tea shop, and there was a vegan restaurant or a raw foods restaurant over there that closed some time ago, and I believe that they're reopening. There's a wine bar, some cool sandwich shops and things. So there's all of that. Then as you move further west toward I-95, it becomes more rural and poorer, the poor part of town. A good bit of West St. Augustine, as it's called, actually was a plantation back in the day. And there's a main thoroughfare road that is named for the man who owned the plantation, Holmes, the Holmes plantation, Holmes Road. A lot of it was his land. There was a big land boom here in St. Augustine in the 1920s, where people were selling and selling and selling. And anyway, there's a little more to come of that, but I just wanted to let you know this is an old industrial area that it used to be a mercantile area, then it became an industrial area, and then it, as part of the reconstruction and resettlement of folks after the Civil Rights Act, it became a safe and sanctified Black part of town. So, and of course, it's on the wrong side of the tracks, right? As those things often are. But it had been a thriving Black community for many years and still is very much a Black community, working class, lots of working class Black people, lots of working class white folks too, and it's all able to maintain the integrity of it. You know, I don't think people can come in and make their houses all crazy and Airbnb and all that nonsense. I think you have to leave things neighborhoody in the way they are. So this is a cemetery that's back in there, back in the Black part of town, shall we say, that has been since after the Civil Rights Act and well, after slavery, actually, because it was a plantation. If you remember a video I did of the first abandoned cemeteries that I found, which it's two cemeteries that were right one in front of the other, the Pinehurst and the San Sebastian. That's back there in this area. Completely abandoned, completely overgrown. This is not too far from there. So I was driving around in this area where this Black college used to be, a college where the author Zora Neale Hurston actually taught and was a big part of ultimately what became the civil rights movement that bolstered in St. Augustine, along with Selma and Birmingham and Atlanta. And King was here. And this part of town then in the 60s was all very key to that, along with another part of town that's known as Lincolnville. But this part of town was Black then too. So these are Black cemeteries that are abandoned. Now, I guess some of it had something to do with the fact that it's West St. Augustine, and that these properties were never really registered with the state or with the county. So though there's a law that says the county is supposed to take care of cemeteries, because it's not registered, there's no law to force it. So what happens here, what happens in the other cemetery, the San Sebastian and the Pinehurst, is if it's maintained at all, it's maintained by the families of those interned or by the neighbors. Now, this is completely surrounded by people's homes, by the way, completely surrounded by people's homes. And I will tell you that they watched me very carefully. There was one elderly gentleman who came out of his house and watched me drive in, because there's a dirt road that goes around. How cemeteries have like a round road so you can drive around. Came out and watched me very carefully. This white girl out here, right? You know, and paid very, very close attention to me, and I understood what he was doing, and I was fine with it. You know, I liked it, actually. So, yeah, there's a West St. Augustine. This is going to be key right here. This one is going to be very key. Remember this headstone. There were people watching me, and then people that live around there that came home also got out of their cars and stood and watched me. So I thought that was cool. I like that. And I would tend to imagine that these might be some of the people who actually are doing what can be done, who might be helping mow the lawn or raking leaves. It's certainly in better shape than the Pinehurst and San Sebastian, which are, if you remember, completely overgrown. But there are also places where you see this, his headstone is upset. Again, this is a very wet part of St. Augustine. See, there's this one that's completely fallen in. So there's that too. And churches in the area. There's a big Baptist church not too far from here that I didn't snap a picture of, but it's, again, well, some people would say that it was similar to Richard Upjohn's Carpenter Gothic, the topic of my last video. It's Tartarian technology. And you're going to see at the end of the video, there's a water treatment plant that is so freaking Moorish Hyperborean technology, stunning, but that's a whole nother topic. Anyway, we have a lot of these handwritten. I just love those, you know. I find that so much more meaningful than all the, I appreciate the craftsmanship in the carved marble ones, obviously, right? Beautiful work, right? But that, to me, like, you can see his hand writing it. I mean, God, and some of these are not ancient, you know, some of these hand done concrete stones, these people were laid to rest in the 80s and the 90s. I mean, it wasn't like it was the 20s. So I really like that. But anyway, yeah, like I said, this cemetery, Woodlawn Cemetery, it does not have a lot of information about it. I can't figure out when it was established. There's nothing about when it was established. I can give you the address. It's at 626 Brune Street, B-R-U-E-N, in West St. Augustine. And as you may have known from watching my other videos about cemeteries, is, you know, in like in St. Augustine, because if you dig 6 feet, you hit water. Florida's a big aquifer. There's a lot of bodies of water in marshland in St. Augustine. The ground's very damp, so it's very common to inter people in these above ground crypts. I don't know. I guess they're not crypts. And it's not abandoned as badly as some of the others, but again, you see general neglect. You see, this is cracked and the earth is moved around it, and when it floods, the water comes in and deposits leaves, but it's beautiful and it's big. So, excuse me, I'm going to sip some tea. So what little bit I was able to find were about 3 residents of Woodlawn here. And I'm going to flip through the photos and read. So apparently there was a Purple Heart Bronze Star recipient from Vietnam, private first class by the name of Lamar Williams, who was here. And I have come to learn that the way things look now are actually really, really good compared to the way they've looked in the past. I found an old article from some newspaper in Jacksonville where I guess this cemetery looked as bad as the San Sebastian does, which is the one that I've made a couple videos about walking around. So anyway, Mr. Williams was interred here, and his daughter was very upset by the fact that the cemetery was in such disrepair, and there was nothing that could be done at the time because it wasn't registered. The city and the county really took no responsibility, and if you have a community organization, it's only as good as the volunteers in the community. So things were hit and miss. Anyway, because of his accomplishments, his Purple Heart and his Bronze Star, she was able to get him exhumed and moved to Arlington. Now I'll tell you, there is one site at least that I took a picture of an exhumation, and it didn't look like a recent exhumation. In fact, it looks like they just dug him up and left whole, which I don't think is often the case, but I wonder if that's him. There's no indication of who was there before. The West St. Augustine Improvement Association took over all 3 of these cemeteries for a short period of time, that being the San Sebastian, the Pinehurst, and this one being the Woodlawn, all 3 Black cemeteries with lots of veterans in all 3. And again, they were maintaining things for a while, straightening stones, digging things out of the dirt, cleaning, mowing. But again, things only last as long and are as effective as the volunteers themselves. So let me reduce that and go back here. This is probably the most significant gentleman that's buried here from a historical standpoint. Frank Butler. Butler is one of those names, if you're in St. Augustine, that you've heard and you know. We have an area called Butler Beach. It's just south on the coast road from here on A1A. And I knew some of this stuff from people talking about it, but I didn't know it all. So I was looking this up this morning, drinking my coffee, and it was interesting. So I'm going to let you look at Mr. Butler's and his wife, Minnie's stone, while I read you about that. So this stone, by the way, is very near the front, and the front being right off of Broome Avenue, which is a dead-end road that goes back into what just now is completely beautiful, overgrown. Just gorgeous. I mean, again, best part of being in an abandoned cemetery is that you're usually surrounded by woods, and what a great place to be with all the elementals. Anyway, so Mr. Butler was a key part of the civil rights movement and actions in St. Augustine, including the Wade Inn, where Black students dared to get in the ocean at white beaches, shaking my head. Or also, there was a famous incident of Black college students jumping into a pool at a motor lodge on A1A. Probably heard of that. That's a pretty famous one. I actually didn't realize that was here in St. Augustine. And the owner poured acid in the pool to get them out. So he was a big part of that. So Mr. Butler was born August 4th, 1885 in DuPont, Georgia. His mom ran a restaurant, kind of more like a catering company. She fed the people who were part of the railroad industry. Kind of the story of similar to the story of the submarine po' boys in Louisiana, New Orleans. And his dad was a professional fisherman. So he married Mamie Davis, and they had a daughter at 17. But there were not very good jobs. Not Mamie, Minnie. Excuse me, Minnie. No, I'm sorry, Mamie. His first wife was Mamie. I'm sorry. I'm looking at the screen and looking at my paper. His first wife was Mamie. They had a daughter. He was 17, but there weren't good jobs for a gentleman like himself in DuPont. So he moved down to Fernandina Beach, Florida. Fernandina Beach is like when you cross the border from Georgia into Florida. Fernandina Beach is like the first place you come into. Marshy inlet town, very nautical. Fort Clinch, the remains of Fort Clinch was there, Anastasia National Park, all that good stuff. So he moved down to Fernandina Beach, which, because of all the aquatic stuff at the time, was busy. And his wife, Mamie, was actually ill after delivering their daughter, so she did not move and actually passed away within the year of the move. So that's very unfortunate. So Mr. Butler was able to work as a bartender for a Sicilian immigrant whose name is, and I'm sure I'll say this wrong, Solcito Salvadore. He had a bar, restaurant, and so Mr. Butler worked for him, and then Salvadore moved to St. Augustine to open a market, and Mr. Butler followed and interned and became a butcher. Now in 1914, Mr. Butler, having worked and saved his money, opened his own market in the area known as Lincolnville. So Lincolnville in old maps is also referred to as Negro Town. It's written that way, Negro Town. It was the area on the west side of the Maria Sanchez Creek, which has been greatly filled in, unfortunately, and all that Flagler stuff, like Hotel Alcazar and even the Ponce de Leon Hotel, are built on the filled in Maria Sanchez Creek. If you look at some of the videos that I've done about both those places, you can see where back in the late 1800s, when this was all new, well, it wasn't new, but the infrastructure around it was new. You can see that that area around both those hotels is kind of marshy and boggy, and that was Maria Sanchez Creek. They had to fill all that in to build those hotels. Of course, Flagler didn't build those hotels, but anyway. So it became Lincolnville because that's where the freed slaves were allowed to go and kind of be left alone and set up habitation. And that's the area south of the main part of St. Augustine. In fact, Lincolnville pretty much starts south of St. Francis Barracks, which is where the three pyramids are that I've made some videos on. That's all Lincolnville back there. Absolutely beautiful. I have some friends and clients back there. Beautiful old homes that, again, are preserved. There's a lot of very important history back there, especially civil rights history. That's where Martin Luther King spent most of his time when he came in '64. Anyway, so that was Negro Town, and it's still referred to as Lincolnville. It's St. Augustine, but it's like, you know, the neighborhood is referred to as Lincolnville. Okay, anyway, so in 1914, Mr. Butler opened his Palace Market in Lincolnville, which was right next to his home. And his family was very active in St. Paul's African Methodist Episcopal Church, which was the church, the key church that was part of Dr. King and all the civil rights stuff that happened in St. Augustine. Let me go ahead and advance that. You've seen his headstone long enough. Let's go to another one. Here's a, see, the water moves through here and it upends a lot of stones, unfortunately. Very sad, but at least the stone's intact. There were a lot of places where these military stones were propped up behind them with blocks of wood and things. Okay, so his home and business were on Washington Street, which was like the main drag of Lincolnville, and yet it was all the west bank of Maria Sanchez Creek. So yeah, so after the Civil War, this was an area that was designated for free blacks. 1866, Lincolnville was established, pretty much. It was kind of like ghetto segregation, right? Okay, y'all can live here, but you stay here, right? So they were allowed to have their businesses and whatnot, because the Klan, there was a lot of Klan here. They wanted them black folk to stay where they were supposed to stay. And interestingly, after Reconstruction, there were black men that were elected to public office to be a town marshal, tax collector, and justice of the peace here in Lincolnville. I don't remember exactly when, but there was a time where a black gentleman was elected to regular city council for all of St. Augustine, not just Lincolnville, and that didn't last very long. He was assassinated. Yeah, things were pretty bad here. Pretty bad. So yeah, so originally infrastructure was put in place so that this area called Lincolnville could be self-protecting, self-supporting, self-maintaining town marshal, tax collector, justice of the peace. But then after the turn of the century, as things were brewing, right, for the civil rights changes to come, Florida at least started implementing poll taxes and restricted voting laws to really discourage uppity black folk from voting or getting involved. Now, Mr. Butler was very successful in his businesses, and after buying a home and opening his store, he was able to open a real estate business in a rented space. That was in 1915. And then he started buying business spaces in areas to develop for African-American families. And the College Park subdivision is something that he is responsible for. He paired with some other business people in the area, pooling the money of Black people, but also with the assistance of very well-to-do and very well-known white business people at the time to create opportunities for Black folk. So yeah, Florida had this land boom in the 20s, and but Florida also had Jim Crow laws, and a lot of deeds had in them the language not to be sold to persons of Negro blood. But Butler, as I said, was able to befriend conscious white leaders who informed him of tax law breaks and tipped him off to opportunities to buy land very inexpensively. So he kept buying up land in various parts, not just Lincolnville, but all over, to give Black people an opportunity to either rent business space from him, buy a piece of land, build a house, that type of thing. He was a part of the Florida Baptist Academy, moving from Jacksonville to St. Augustine, and that's something that we're going to talk about at the end. We had a significant Black college here that had to relocate after all the Ku Klux Klan stuff in the 60s. It eventually became the Florida Normal and Industrial Institute, a normal school being a school that taught teachers. And then ultimately it became Florida Memorial College. Dr. Nathan Collier, who is also buried here at Woodlawn. Let me advance that photo for you so you can see somebody else. So Dr. Nathan Collier was the president and key founder of what eventually became Florida Memorial College. And part of the founding of the college was to teach the concepts that Booker T. Washington made famous, which were calling for Black progress through Black education and Black entrepreneurship and independence, to challenge Jim Crow and the disenfranchisement of Black voters in the South. And speakers from other states, speakers and educators were brought in to help with this. And actually, Zora Neale Hurston, I think I mentioned that, taught there. She lived in St. Augustine for a year and taught at the college. The building that she lived in is gone. It's a park now. And all that's left of it is there's a plaque that says Zora Neale Hurston Park. So Butler became the president of the Colored Business and Professional Men's League in the early 20s. And with others, he formed the College Park Realty Company. So bringing more investors into this plan to open up opportunities, including a famous or infamous white physician who was seeing Black patients in his white practice and had an integrated waiting room, which people were not very happy of. There's a real key person in the St. Augustine civil rights movement, Dr. Haling, who was a Black dentist who did the same. He had an integrated waiting room. And yeah, another person that had a hard time. Let's zoom that in so we can get a better look. See, there's a lot of veterans here. You can see in this one a lot of the water damage. And I'm not sure what's going on here, but it's something the family's doing. And again, tradition in African and Caribbean cultures is to plant a tree near the head of the deceased. So this, I believe, is the White family compound, and this is their tree. See, it's all walled there. You know, there's this many, you know, who knows if there's anybody else here? We don't know. They're not in crypts if they are. But yeah, so let's move on. Oh, isn't that beautiful? That was actually one of my favorites. Don't know when that gentleman died, but isn't that gorgeous? Oh, gorgeous. So in 1927, Mr. Butler started buying property in the undeveloped land on Anastasia Island. So Anastasia Island is across the Matanzas River from St. Augustine. It's not an island, it's a peninsula. But that's where the stone quarries were that we are to believe the coquina came from to build Castillo San Marcos. It's where many of the old buildings and walls and the original city wall and whatnot, things that survived all three big St. Augustine fires survived because they were built out of coquina, which is a kind of seashell limestone. And that's what Anastasia Island was known for, is the coquina quarries. But most of the land was swampy, marshy, palmetto, cypress swamp, and kind of almost impossible to develop. And there was a gentleman by the name of Edgar Palmer who had tracts of land that he purchased, you know, by swampland. Land boom. Butler had been very successful in his endeavors and had the money and the friends to actually get his hands on some of Edgar Pullman's undeveloped land. He wanted to develop a Black resort because Black folks couldn't go to the beaches. They, you know, they couldn't go into the white businesses. They had to stay in their part of, you know how horrible it was. So he wanted to build a Black resort. But some of these white influential gentlemen in the area talked him into doing more than that, but actually turning it into a community so that Black people could move over to the beachfront, Anastasia Islands on the Atlantic Ocean, move over to the beachfront and start building their community over there. He had two communities going on the St. Augustine side, but to cross the Matanzas River and start developing the beach side. So those gentlemen were Frank Upchurch, who is a very well-known name here. There is still an Upchurch law firm, who later became a city commissioner, mayor, and then a senator for Florida, and Frank E. Hale, who at the time was a county commissioner, and Dan Mickler, another name that's well known here. There's Mickler Drive and Mickler Creek, and another well known. So these three influential guys helped Butler obtain credit to do more than build a resort, but actually build a community. And I just looked at the clock and it's 12:12. Hey! So on July 22nd, 1927, he was able to buy 8.5 acres and then a strip of 38 acres that ran along the Matanzas River. But as I said, it was sandy and swampy. Let's use this photo and move it to the next one. Oh, okay. Yeah, there's the removal. Interesting. It's interesting how close it was to this one. There's more than one exhumation there, sadly. But I just found it interesting how it was just left. But you see, it's really a beautiful place. You see, it backs up into the woods. Gorgeous. But yeah, that was very saddening to see. And there's no notification of who that is, so I wonder if it was the Purple Heart gentleman. So Edgar Palmer had been trying to help Butler work with the city to get things done, get things moving. And he had been petitioning the county to help build a road so they could clear the area, drain the swamp, and put in infrastructure so that he could develop his land. But all the white landowners around used their money and influence to make sure that that didn't happen. And it wasn't until 1931 that a gravel road was developed. So he bought the property in 27, but it wasn't until 31 that they could get a road built. White folk, good Lord, I'm one of them. Okay, but in the St. Augustine Post in 1933, there was an ad for the Seabreeze Casino, a new colored recreation center that would send out cars and buses and a ferry to pick people up from where they were and bring them over to the location. And in July of 1937, it finally opened. Hard opening. Before that, it had been a soft opening. Now, his experiences with all this nonsense, trying to develop an area, the Klan and all that hooey, really stressed him in a need to get into politics. And so he really started, even more than before, being a troublemaker, getting Black folks to register to vote, white. He helped white and Black educational centers. There were poor white folk too, whose kids didn't get things that they should have had access to because they were poor white trash and all that. So he was a part of all of that. And he was on the Republican Executive Committee for St. Augustine, well, for Florida, for 12 years. Eventually, he was able to purchase the rest of Pomar's land with the same realtors and lawyers, Frank Hale and Frank Upchurch. And then that allowed him to, oh, I'm going to sneeze. Sorry. That allowed Black people the opportunity to start buying and developing their communities over there on the beach side, which is what he wanted all along. In 1958, there was an establishment of Butler Park, which Butler Park is still there. He sold half of his total holdings to the state of Florida to develop a permanent place, state park, where that was a Black park, or they said colored back then, colored people park, where Black families could come, camp, enjoy the beach, barbecue, play sports, all of that. So he did that in 58. And in 1962, Florida voted the money to develop the park. Prior to that, it had just been, this is an area where this can happen. Black people can come here, they can get in the water, they can barbecue, they can do whatever they want. And they were left alone, right? Segregation works, right? But in 62, Florida decided that they were going to develop it. And this came from a fact that they had learned that there had been 32,729 overnight visitors between 56 and 66, and then 53,693 between 66 and 67. So clearly they saw an opportunity for income. I don't know what they were charging to get into the park at the time once they bought it, if they charged at all. But they had some kind of ticker system to record how many people were coming in. And so they saw a need to make more money. So they developed it. And there is an area when you're driving south on A1A, the road that basically goes from the eastern foot of the Ridge of Lions on Anastasia Island all the way down to the end of Florida, A1A. But you go through Butler Beach. And that's named after Butler. Butler passed away in 1973, and as you saw, he was buried at Woodlawn near the front. Shortly after he died, the park closed due to vandalism, but the city went in and spent a lot of money revamping it, and the Army Corps dredged out a boat ramp, so it's snazzier. This is interesting, isn't it? I can't quite figure that out. I don't know if what was carved on it has worn away or if the writing is on the other side. But you see a lot of these things at abandoned cemeteries. Isn't that interesting? Can't read that, can you? Let's see. Looks like it's handwritten. I have no idea, but I love that, right? I mean, I love, someone cast that marker, and another veteran. Isn't this interesting? I don't know what that's about. I wonder if this was sitting on it. I don't know. Here you can see the effects of flooding and how it knocks things off. Handwritten stone for the Reverend. And I would imagine, I don't know, that he served at the Baptist church, which is about 6 blocks away from here. But you can see the effects of the water there. Isn't that gorgeous? And clearly someone's mowing the lawn. We've got some upset here on the water, some upset and unevenness here, but you see it's just, it's surrounded by houses. And as I said, the people that were home were paying a lot of attention to me. Got one that's really upset there. Isn't that beautiful? And, if your family is here, what a beautiful place to come and spend time with your loved ones. Gorgeous, just gorgeous. Okay, so Dr. Collier. This is strange. On the other side of this wall is either the private property of someone who has a whole bunch of those pod things, the movable storage units, or it's county property or city property. I'm not sure which, but there's a whole bunch of those pod things. And there's a wall. And so the lion is facing the wall that separates the cemetery from all these pods. Now, there's no way of knowing what was back there then when he was laid to rest in 1941. Surely there were no pods, but it was just kind of an odd thing. It's a very stately, noble memorial here to Dr. Collier and his wife, but the positioning is sad. I guess they're looking east, and maybe it has something to do with that. The lion's looking east. But so yeah, he was the president and founder of Florida Normal and Industrial Memorial College. So I just have a little bit to read about him. So as you can see, he was born in 1872, passed away in 1941. He was the president of Florida Baptist Institute, Florida Normal and Technical School from 1896 on. He established the Florida Baptist Institute with another educator named Sarah Ann Blocker, combining both their schools, combining the Florida Baptist Institute with the Florida Baptist Academy. And he was president of both, the culmination of those from 1896 to 1941. So the run of his life. And that later became Florida Memorial University. He was born in Augusta, Georgia, studied at Atlanta University, and he was involved in the school, later moving to Jacksonville, which they did for safety after all the burnings and stabbings and shootings, and yet another attempt on Martin Luther King's life that came in '64. So that's all I have for what little bit I could find about the cemetery. Isn't that interesting how like the top is rotting away? I'm just gonna let you guys see. Born February 17th. Okay, he was born March 19th, 1915, and he passed away. Oh, I don't know if it's he or her. February 17th, 36. See, it's just gorgeous. And you can walk right into all of that. There's an example of what it looks like. Lush and beautiful. Yeah, so I was out actually driving around the area that used to be all part of Florida Memorial College when I stumbled upon the cemetery. So I took all the pictures and then I tried to do a little research. Can't read either of those, but and see if it was a maintained cemetery, you'd be able to read them. Just backs up into this just lushness. So there's a crypt underneath there and a headstone to the crypt, but you see floodwater has covered the crypt. That's where I'd like to be buried, you know, and who knows? I mean, if I walked into the woods, there might have been more back there. I actually kind of tend to think that that's true. That's certainly the case when I was over at the Pinehurst in San Sebastian. See, because these are about to be overtaken. They're only not overtaken because people in the community are cutting things back, but I bet there's stuff in there. Beautiful. See, it was and again, someone painted the crypt. I love that. See, that's their tree. Another family containment there. So, well, I only saw 2 extant stones, and of course that was their tree. And that one's been damaged by the water. You see, it's kind of half in, half out. We've got that family complex, and you can see how the floodwater has affected that. That whole side of the enclosure is flooded out. And that's the dirt road. Yeah, that was disturbing. I was there. The neighbors were paying very close attention to me, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I like that they were, but you see, the water has moved this headstone completely out of whack. There was a gentleman who pulled in to the dark road here, the dirt road, blasting music with his window open. There were people in the car, they were hooting and hollering, and it smelled like they were smoking weed and hooting and hollering and talking really loud on their phones. And they were there for quite a while. They were not there to visit family members. They were there, I guess, because they thought that they could, must be a safe place where they can be alone and do their shenanigans. And they weren't paying very much attention to me. The only thing that happened is they pulled in and they saw me, and so they drove around to the other side so they wouldn't be near me. But eventually, someone in one of the houses must have heard the noise or seen them and got in their car and started to drive their car onto the land, and that scooted those disrespectful loudmouths out of the park, which I appreciated. I mean, oh goodness. So that's her tree. Got another family enclosure there, and they had 2 trees, which and then a whole bunch of stuff over here too, which sadly isn't living anymore. That's very sad. Their trees didn't survive. Beautiful. So it's in bad shape. World War I. And there you see water damage. There's a crypt underneath there, and that stone has been abandoned and it's just laying on the crypt, and that one's wonky. Another painted one, so pretty. Got an enclosure there and a hand cut stone. Oh, that one. See, that's painted blue and there's a blue bench, and this one's painted blue and there's a blue bench. I love that. So the family can come and sit and hang out. And hand cut stone that has fallen. Beautiful. You can see the damage from the water. So this is a crypt. You see that suffered a lot of flood damage and actually cracked. A lot of flood damage here, and we've got a vet in there too, so that's very sad. I loved this. They bring food and put the food on the plate. Oh my God, how beautiful is that? I'm just glad no one stole the plate. You know, I wonder, you know, maybe every Sunday they bring dinner. God, that's beautiful. See, very well populated, shall we say, cemetery. That's such an interesting kind of homemade thing. Right next to a tree. Beautiful. Can't read it, but isn't that beautiful? Handwritten one, burying people around the tree that was there. And now we're on the other side, just kind of walking around, and there is a fence around certain parts. Not much of a fence. I love that one. See, that's their plant. Family enclosure here. There are at least 3 gopher turtle holes on the cemetery lot, which I just love to see. I mean, again, bury me out in the woods or near the woods so the woods can consume everything, and then let the turtles burrow near me. I love that. I loved that. A lot of damage there, but it's gorgeous. 2 trees for that person. Another gopher turtle hole. Love it, love it, love it. Isn't that lovely and lush? There was at least, well, I guess there's 1, 2, 3. There were at least 4. And then you've got all this beautiful stuff planted there. Just beautiful. A child up there, unfortunately. That one's really sad, you know. Water damage just upset the whole crypt. I love that one. The head and the footstone. Again, I'm saddened by the fact that their trees, or, well, that's not a tree, some kind of shrub, I guess, has died. But you see, that was just beautiful when they buried that ancestor. Just beautiful. A lot of vets. That one looks like it's been recently kind of reclaimed from the earth there. You had a stone here and a tree that they had to cut down. Very sad. Another painted one, so pretty. And now we're getting back there into the woods, and you see, like, man, that's the place to be. And that tree is young enough that it could have been planted for that person. Look at that, see? That's the place to be. You can see the flood damage there. Flood damage, but look at, oh my God, so beautiful. Yeah, I don't know what makes these things rot. Isn't that interesting? completely buried there, but in a perfect place. And I didn't notice that before, but look, there's something back there. There's a stone back there. More water damage. Isn't that an interesting one? Let's take a closer look. At rest. That was a common inscription that I saw in the cemetery, at rest. Almost completely destroyed by floodwater. You know, why do they rot? I don't know. I don't know what makes those things rot. That beautiful one. You see how upended this is. But you see, I love this family is so engaged with their ancestors here, and this family planted this tree. And they've got that lantern right there. Mr. Jackson was a mason. They had to cut the tree down, sadly. No idea what that says, but it's absolutely gorgeous. Had to cut that tree down too. See, so sad. But someone restored the stone. And water damage. Beautiful. Can't read that stone at all. See, beautiful, beautiful place. It's what is, oh, and now I'm seeing that I repeated some of the photos. Sorry about that. Lovely place to come and visit your ancestors. And then it went interesting. It just backs up into the woods. See, that's clearly been cleared out for that veteran, you know, because that would just be all overgrown, but they cleared that out. Don't you love that? Damage. Look at that. Oh, and these flowers were blooming. Just so beautiful. There's an example. It's just going crazy there. So pretty. See, that family member is alive in their ancestors' lives. I love all these little light things that are part of the culture here. Just beautiful. Again, those families are very involved in the significance of that ancestor in their lives. Beautiful. But obviously they're keeping track of it, and you know, wonder if there's anybody else back there. Who knows? It's only the families and the neighborhoods that are. That's mom. They're keeping it. And that's sad. The cross fell down. I don't know what happened here. Yeah. There were two stones. Oh. Luscious. Now this was interesting. There were a couple places where back in the woods, and there are houses back behind here, there was like a fenced enclosure, just chain link fence. And in that chain link fence was like a family plot. And this is one of them. And the plants are all growing all over, but that's part of the family plot. Beautiful, nice big cypress tree there. So beautiful, so peaceful and beautiful. Oh gosh, stunning. That poor old tree. Okay. Now, more Tartarian, Hyperborean, Moorish, St. Augustine. I only included this in this video because it's right out there. And this is the kind of stuff that I actually went over there for. So this is another video. It's going to take me a while. But, you know, especially if you've watched some of Autodidactic or Michelle Gibson's videos, Campbell and Michelle both get into how there are city and county waterworks buildings and post offices and county works and all this stuff, and how they're in these magnificent buildings that you know were not built to be a sewage treatment plant or a post office or any of that. But this is the sewage water treatment plant for St. Augustine. There were two buildings like this, and actually right behind where I'm sitting is another one. So there were at least 3 of these. And I mean, I think the technology was already in the buildings. And that's why they were turned into those kinds of establishments, because the technology was already there. But yeah, just take a look at that. Look at that. Look at that Hyperborean door. All this technology here. Yeah, this is on West King, by the way. You can't get anywhere near this. I was briefly in the parking lot across the street of the Public Works building, which looks just like this. And literally, I pulled in like I was going to turn around, and I stepped out of my car to take a picture. And as soon as I stepped out of my car, somebody came out of the building toward me. So I got in my car and got the hell out of there. But yeah, so there's the other one. Yep. Water treatment plant. Yep, that's what it was built for. Yeah, sure. I had to hurry in these photos because, like I said, I was being pursued. And then that's another building on the corner that you see. This kind of stuff is on all 4 sides. You see there's this stuff over here, and it goes all the way back. They've completely enclosed that. There are these old columns, which of course we know were toroid magnetic generators. And there is another building on the more west of here on King Street that has a lot of this on it. That's some kind of store now. But again, see this stuff? Yeah, this stuff. Plasma collectors. So yeah, I had to take that from my car. I'm sorry. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to do a video on these being you know, reclaimed technology, because what Michelle Gibson and at least Michelle Gibson and Campbell at Autodidactic have done are just superlative. I mean, check both of those out. But I did just take a couple minutes to, I wanted to see some other water treatment plants. If you haven't heard this theory before, like the technology to process water in one way or another, either electromagnetically or ancient sewer systems being already there, and the inheritors found it. If you hadn't heard that, I just wanted to include a couple pictures of other places where mysteriously advanced architecture and technology are water treatment plants. So look at that. This is another one in Florida. Huh. City Hall and water treatment plant. I can't remember where. Let's see if you can see it on there. It says City Hall. Octagon. No. Oh, Auburndale. Yeah. Octagon. What happened to the bell? Yeah, they built that for City Hall. Sure they did. That's a water treatment plant somewhere in Florida. These things right here, right? Yeah, all just a coincidence. Look at that. Look at that. It's a round building. Yeah, like Clinton Castle in Lower Manhattan. That's the fire department in Pasco County. These are all in Florida. Sure, that's the fire department. That looks like the Capitol building in Des Moines, Iowa. Give me a break. Okay, so Florida Memorial College, as I talked to you about, Dr. Collier took his college, Southern Baptist Institute, and blended it with a colleague's college, and they formed Florida Memorial College on the old plantation land of Mr. Holmes. And it stood on Holmes Drive and West King. So this was down here. This is where Dr. Collier, who I showed you is buried there at Woodlawn with the lion at attention, he and his wife. He helped found this college that was both a normal school, meaning it was a teacher's college, and then an industrial agricultural college. And this is where a lot of the students that were involved in the civil rights marches in St. Augustine in '64 obviously came from. Black students came from all over the South and perhaps farther than even the South to take part in this. And this college was a very important part of all of that. Now, this is the old entrance. And that's right at the corner of West King and Holmes Road. This is an old photo, but this is actually all that remains. They moved the college to Jacksonville during all that civil rights unrest because people were getting shot, things were getting burned down. Apparently there was shots fired into one of the dormitory buildings here, and I think a building was burned down here. That's all that's left of it. I didn't take that picture because, again, there's nowhere to park around here. But that's all that's left, the old entryway. Everything is gone. The old stadium is still there. There's an area that was probably some part of the college quad area. Now it's kind of a big park. But you'll drive past and you'll see that. That's all that's left of that now. If you walk around behind here, you can see where there has been a lot of burning. There's charred stuff kind of in the trees. And a friend of mine who's lived here his whole life told me that if you walk way back in the forest behind there, you can see whole foundations of buildings that have been burned down. So I think there's a lot more to the destruction than, well, certainly that I know about, but I haven't really started doing research on it yet. This was part of the campus. Let's see when this is taken. It doesn't say, but this was the girls' dorm. Okay, so isn't it interesting that this was all a plantation and it was turned into a Black college? Don't you love that? But again, these buildings were here. See all that? Look at that one. These buildings were here. Masons everywhere. Oh, did I come to my end? I think I might have come to my end. Yes, I came to my end. Let me back up a little bit. Yeah, so that's the fire station across the street there. That's King Street right there, and then the side street is Holmes Road, and then there's a plaque there. But so yeah, so This was a kind of a discombobulated one. I was happy to stumble across a beautiful old cemetery, and it was so big and so expansive and so lovely that I just wanted to share. And all this stuff at the end was just kind of I mean, come on, really? Yeah, that's the water department. That was built for that. Uh-huh, sure, right. And of course, they don't let you near it. But you see, this whole area out here was part of the old infrastructure, right? So that building that in the last in the slideshow that was supposedly the girls' dormitory, it was there. And when Mr. Holmes had his plantation, it was there. So that's even stranger, right? Not only was there a black college on an old plantation, but they're using buildings that were used by the plantation owner for their black slaves. How strange is that, right? Interesting, interesting karma. And you learn some cool stuff about two really important people in the civil rights movement, Mr. Butler of Butler's Beach, and basically establishing the infrastructure and real estate for Black folks in St. Augustine to set up communities and buy homes and whatnot and have a park that they could go to without being had dogs sugged on them and beaten by the police for daring to get in the ocean, uh, and start building their lives. And then Dr. Collier, who is responsible for this fabulous school. So what a shame that cemeteries like this one are gone to rot. You know, it's possible that when this cemetery was founded, that the county might not have acknowledged it for registration because it was for Black folks. It's possible. And again, we don't know how many people are buried there. We don't know how long that beautiful land has been used for places of worship. And I'm telling you, every inch of St. Augustine has a dead Indigenous person under it. Every inch. So I love that the trees are big and wide and that the forest is taking it over. And I love that the families are coming in and doing what they can to keep it lovely for their families. And I love that the personal touches, the plate on the crypt literally brought tears to my eyes. That was just so, so beautiful. And so there is hope. There is hope for humanity. But it starts one family at a time, one community at a time. So anyway, thank you for hanging out with me today. I'm going to make some more tea. And this is Joyce at Medusa Was Framed, thanking you for your support and your interest and coming along on this journey with me. And I'll see you in a couple more days.